Here's how you can quickly and easily drive traffic to your website and create more sales for your copywriting, marketing, or business development agency. I'm Justin Hitt from Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. First off, content alone is not going to make your website profitable. In fact, I want you to throw out the notion of website and instead look at multi-channel. I want you to reach out in multiple channels: website, video, audio, online, offline, Amazon as a marketplace, your local community as a marketplace, platforms for speaking, and more. The website as a metaphor rather than a channel or the sole channel is going to transform your outcomes. You can have a low traffic website with a high amount of sales by doing this simple thing. First off, you want to get the addresses of your prospects. You can narrow down your target audience and get their addresses by renting lists. You can get their addresses by compiling them. Maybe you serve people who are members of a certain type of trade organization. And then once you get this list together, I want you to farm that list in every medium that works. Your visitors might be so busy that they're not going on the web. Your visitors might be over there fascinated by social media, and they're over there on Facebook or YouTube, and they're over there on LinkedIn, and they're over there they're just not leaving those platforms because those platforms have done such a great job of keeping those people there. You need to get them to raise their hand, get on your list, and then transact with you to get them off of the site. There's got to be a compelling offer so valuable that when they get involved with it, they're going to stay focused and attentive to what it is that you're going to do. Something that takes them to the next level. So if you're a copywriter, marketer, or business development professional, you're going to be better off using what's called a Dream 100 list. And that Dream 100 list is going to find 100 individuals who are most likely, most capable, most secure in their financial position that they can make a decision to do business with you over anybody else. Dan Kennedy's magnetic marketing, that you doing a series of letters to that list, is one of the great ways to unlock that. Transforming your content, if you create any content at all, into what Frank Kern calls results in advance. It's content that helps a prospect take a meaningful step towards the goals and objectives they want while understanding that you are the path to their success, so that they raise their hand and they get involved with what you have to offer. You need to have events. You might have an event on YouTube. You might have an event on Facebook. You might have an event off your own website on a webinar. You might have an event in your local community. You might have an event where someone calls you up on the telephone and interviews you. Every one of these events needs to be recorded so that you do the work once and then you slice up that recording, kind of like Joe Rogan does with his podcast. He has a 2 or 3 hour interview with somebody, and then that interview goes to his team, and his team chops that up into pieces and puts it out on the right channels. Because if you're focused on Facebook, if you're focused on YouTube, if you're focused on your own website, then you're not connecting with prospects where they're located in the marketplace. So again, you identify an audience. This is your target market. You qualify that audience. You start sending them letters directly. I was going to work with a cyber security firm. Now, I go out and I work with different organizations. In this organization, we were talking about direct targeting their target customers, but the owners and executives, by researching their home address and FedExing a package to their home address to talk with them about identity theft, cybersecurity, and privacy. These are big issues right now. They're big concerns in the marketplace. And by exposing the individual to the fact that we could find their home address, even though they're the CEO of a Fortune 1000 organization, and we could find their home address and send them information, would help them understand the threat that is there. Now, this is one of those things where you scare them, kind of like a fire alarm sale. You know, you point out the fact that there's crime in the area and the crime is moving closer to their home, and ultimately you need to do something. And so that campaign didn't, the client didn't move on that campaign as fast as I'd have liked him to move on that campaign, and I got a better client that came along, so I kind of had to stop on that. But that's still on the table. But here's where that came from. In the past, we used to write political figures, and we'd write decision makers at major government contractors, and we would show them how working with my client would help support initiatives that they've already publicly announced. So essentially, I would monitor the political campaign speeches. I would monitor all these different meetings and these roundtables and activities that people were involved in the industry. And then I would say, oh, by the way, you mentioned you'd like small businesses in your community to be doing X, Y, and Z. Well, my client actually does Z and could potentially cover these other areas. But right now, if they had more contracts in that area, they would be able to do these other things as far as job creation, as far as, money in the marketplace type of things. So again, by zeroing in on specific buyers with specific interests, you are going out and finding someone to do business with rather than simply loading content on your website and hoping someone comes along to you. Now, the content on your website is necessary to build up credibility, but you don't need 100 million articles on there. You don't even need 1,000 articles. I had websites. In fact, I had 22 websites, niche websites. Some of them had 500 articles. Some of them had 400 articles. Some of them had 100 articles. And over time, as the search engines changed, these sites ended up with no traffic whatsoever. And because they had no traffic, there were no leads. And because there were no leads, there was nobody for me to follow up on. But the day I decided to make a list of 100 or 200 individuals who are uniquely qualified to do business with me over anybody else, well, I pretty much forgot about those sites. Now, of course, the sites got worse and worse over time because links break and there's all kinds of maintenance stuff that needs to be done. And then there's browser changes, and sometimes the stuff is incompatible with browsers and the search engine change. Because I swept all of that aside and I focused specifically on individuals who can make a buying decision with my organization, I was actually too busy to care. Now, I did hire webmasters to go clean things up because it is nice to have that passive lead flow from your website. But you can get the same thing working with mailing houses, working with agencies, and working with other folks. So now here's the flip. If you're a small agency, if you're a copywriter, if you're a business development professional, are you helping your customers buy services from you that aren't really going to help them? Okay, so I know a lot of you folks are doing content development. Is that content specifically tied to metrics to help you know which content is creating sales and which content is not? Are you using topic testing methods that we talk about? Are you helping customers with self-segmentation so that when their prospects raise their hand on different topic groups and areas, they're actually segmenting themselves into niche lists or segments in a larger list so that prospect can then follow up? See, not only should you be doing this for yourself, but you can take the best practices of what works for you and leverage it to your clients. I was working with an equipment company that rented equipment, and they were actually just putting ads in the newspaper. They were putting ads with the Chamber of Commerce, and they were putting ads in places where you would, equipment trader magazines and stuff. Some of those places were more ideally suited for someone who could rent equipment. If you put an ad for equipment rental in an equipment sales magazine, many times people would look at an excavator and they say, well, wow, it's going to cost me $30,000 to get an excavator that big. But look at this, for $100 a day, for $1,000 a day, I could get that same equipment and use it rather than own it, because what they really wanted was to use equipment. But that same ad in the newspaper says nothing because the majority of the newspaper folks are really not renting equipment. They might be homeowners renting equipment, but they're not tradespeople renting equipment. My suggestion to this firm, it was a franchise firm that had a number of locations in the Hampton Roads area. My suggestion to them was to rent a list of general contractors who have had projects in the last 12 months. See, these general contractors are bidding on jobs and they're setting up projects, and to get a list of them, and we start a prospect newsletter. Now, I was selling Fleet Fuel, and the prospect newsletter, this is Sunbelt Rental, by the way. The prospect newsletter was of interest to them. I got paid a consulting fee, and they ended up going within their organization. I wanted to set up a joint venture because people who are renting equipment are also people who are buying fuel. So as a joint venture, we could have actually cut their costs significantly. But long story short, Sunbelt Rental, as a larger national organization, had newsletters that they could send out. And they basically went through their customer base and all their old customers, and then anybody who was a licensed general contractor that was in like excavation areas or home building, they actually started including on their prospect newsletter. Now, from the local branches that I was working with, they had great results. They took it offline. In the beginning, this was in the 2000 something, they are actually printing these newsletters. They had then taken them offline and they do them by email. I have no idea how it works with email. But what I do know is that somebody who's renting equipment, somebody who is a commercial contractor, somebody who is busy in an office space, they aren't necessarily online looking for what you have to offer. They're online screwing around. They're online checking email. They're online wasting time on social media, watching funny cat videos. So here's my point. If you want to increase your sales, if you want to boost your profits, if you want to grow the sales and activity you have on your website, you need to ignore the website in the sense of a single path and start going directly to prospects, and instead using your website as a transactional and a tracking mechanism. Okay? See, that's the real value of so-called internet marketing. You use it for testing, you use it for tracking, and you use it for transactions. The 3 T's of internet marketing or making more from your website is because you can easily send people through that platform. Let's say you talk to somebody on the phone, you sent out a letter, they got a special report, or they had a discovery call with you. You can then say, hey, look, let's get things started. You use a single page onboarding survey, and then you either send them an estimate, which once they approve, they can go online and pay for, or once it's approved and they give you a check, you enter the transaction in your accounting system, and then automation uses the accounting system to send a sale trigger back to your website. Actually coding the transaction as through your accounting system, and then the category of the presentation in your source, medium, and campaign code. Now, this is extremely important because you could then have sales transactions and conversions on your website that have no pages associated with them. Now, this is very important. It would be great if you got a click-through. So when you sent an email to somebody, they clicked through and they're on your website, so you can cookie them so you'll know that their transaction or at least their behavior contributed to the sale. But what do you want more? The sale or the behavior? Now, of course, this gets better with COVID because you can invite people to webinars and you can use coded links. So when they go to the webinar, you can tag them. You can get their email address and use their email address as a key when you code back the transaction. I don't want to get too technical in this right now, but I want you to understand, if you're fixated on social media, if you're fixated on your website, if you're fixated on what everybody's talking about, you're missing the opportunity of simply going direct to your prospects, going direct to your past customers, going direct through joint ventures, going direct in such a way to get someone to raise their hand and say, yes, I'm interested in learning more. I'm interested in finding out how you can help me solve these problems, and then getting them on the phone, getting them into an appointment, getting them into a specialized call or an event, getting them in a position where you can then make your pitch about what you're going to offer. They can cut you a check or pay online. Of course, when they pay online, you're now tracking the transaction. You give them a coded link. They now go pay online. Now you have it's a little more automated. Folks, this can be very complex, and that's why people by default focus on just the internet marketing or just the social media marketing or just the Google local. And they forget that there are billions and billions of dollars happening offline every day. And if you want to jump up to a $10,000 contract guy, you want to be somebody who's making $100,000 assignments or is really growing their 7-figure consultancy or their 7-figure agency doing copywriting, marketing, or business development services, then you've got to listen carefully and just jump offline. It is complex. If you have questions, I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips, where we help copywriters, marketers, and business development professionals get to 7 figures. You already got some clients. Let's leverage those relationships. Let's leverage your experiences, and let's create vehicles that use any marketing channel to drive forward sales. And we're going to do it with words that sell, but it's not just copywriting. It's the business of copywriting. Thanks for listening. Send in your questions to www.adbriefings.co.uk. And again, I'm Justin Hitt. I'm a business analyst and a publisher. Thanks for listening.